All right. Welcome to another narration of mine. Settle in for a moment. This is where the voices I carry meet the version of the truth most people avoid, and where the things we uncover tend to stay with us long after the story ends. Only the brave souls and the fearless ones stay until the end. I've never told this story publicly before. Not fully. Not the real version. Not the parts that kept me from sleeping for months. The parts I still see when I close my eyes. If you're gonna read this, just know it's not some made-up story for attention. This actually happened, and I wish it didn't. I wish I could go back and do it differently. But it's done now. It started about 3 weeks before the shooting. I live alone. Well, lived. I had just gotten out of a long, messy breakup and moved into this one-bedroom house in a quieter part of town. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. I had a little fenced-in backyard, a deadbolt on every door, and finally, some peace. At least, that's what I thought. The first time I noticed something was off was a Wednesday night. It was around 2:30 a.m. I had fallen asleep watching TV in the living room. I was halfway between a dream and waking up when I heard a sound that didn't belong. It was quiet, but sharp. A creaking noise. The floorboards, like someone was slowly stepping down on them, one by one. Now I know that sound, because I live here. I know exactly what it sounds like when I walk from the kitchen to the hall. I know where the boards squeak. And this was that exact sound. I froze. My TV was still on, showing static from a dead channel. The remote was across the room. I didn't move. I just listened. Nothing for a few seconds. Then, crick, another step. I slowly reached under the couch for the baseball bat I kept there. Yeah, it's cliché, but I didn't have a gun back then. I remember holding my breath and tiptoeing toward the hallway like some terrified cartoon character. When I peeked down the hall, nothing. No one. Door closed. Lights off, but the front door? It was cracked open. Just a sliver. Now I know I locked that door. I'm the kind of person who double-checks my locks 3 times. I don't even sleep unless I hear the deadbolt click. So for it to be open like that, even just a little bit, I slammed it shut, locked it, bolted it, and pushed a chair under the handle, just in case. I barely slept that night. The next day, I convinced myself maybe I was just tired. Maybe I thought I locked the door. Maybe I dreamed the noise. That's what your brain does when you're scared. It lies to you, tries to calm you down. But that lie didn't last long. A few nights later, I found muddy footprints on my back porch. Just 2 of them, bare feet. Let that sink in for a second. Someone had walked barefoot through the mud, climbed over my fence, and stood just outside my sliding glass door. The prints were facing the house, not leaving it, not going anywhere, just watching. I called the cops. They showed up, took a few photos, asked a few questions, then gave me the same shrug they always give when there's no broken window or damage. Could be a neighbor, someone drunk. Just keep your doors locked. I asked if they could put extra patrols on the street. They nodded and left. Never saw a single squad car pass after that. Things kept escalating. I started waking up to things moved, items that were just slightly off. One time, my toothbrush was on the wrong side of the sink. Another time, my laundry basket was flipped over. My fridge was left slightly ajar. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just touched, like someone had been inside. And then the pictures started. One morning, I found an envelope on my front porch. No stamp, no writing, just a plain manila envelope with a single photo inside. It was me, taken from outside my window while I slept. It was grainy, dark, but unmistakably me, laying on the couch, the same blanket, the same show, paused on the screen. I'm not exaggerating when I say I puked. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely call 911. The police came back out, took the photo, said they'd look into it. I asked for a case number. They gave me one and left. I bought a gun that day. I wasn't waiting anymore. After that, I didn't sleep. I stayed up every night, lights off, eyes on the window, gun in my lap, waiting. And then he came back. It was 3:12 a.m. on a Friday. I still remember the time because I looked at the clock right before it happened. I was sitting in the hallway, right where I could see both the front and back doors. That's when I heard it again. Kirk. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. He wasn't sneaking this time. I stood up, gun in hand, heart in my throat. I pointed it toward the sound. And there he was. A man. Tall, pale, maybe in his 30s. Filthy hair, no shoes, just a torn-up hoodie, and these sunken, dead eyes. He was inside my house, just standing at the end of the hallway, like he belonged there. He didn't say anything. He didn't run. He just smiled, a wide, crooked smile, like he was proud of himself, like he wanted me to see him. I shouted at him to get out. I told him I was armed. I even fired a warning shot into the floor. But he didn't flinch. He took a step forward, then another. I fired, right into his chest. He dropped. Instantly. I called 911, hyperventilating, shaking so bad I could barely dial. I told them what happened. I told them he broke in. I told them I was defending myself. The cops came, guns drawn. They cuffed me, dragged me out, took my weapon, said I had no evidence he broke in, no forced entry, said there was no threat. Turns out, the guy had a history of mental illness. He was listed as non-violent. They called it a tragedy, said he must have been confused. They charged me. After they took me in, I didn't say a word for the first 6 hours. I sat in that gray, cement-walled room with my wrists cuffed to the metal table, staring at the mirror in front of me. I wasn't looking at my reflection. I was trying to see through it. I kept thinking he'd walk in. Not the cops. Him. Somehow alive. Grinning that dead smile. But the only people who came in were two detectives who looked at me like I was the problem. Not the bleeding body they dragged out of my house. Not the freak who had been watching me sleep. Me. "Tell us what happened," one of them said, like he hadn't already read the report. I told them everything. The photos, the footprints, the guy standing in my hallway at 3 in the morning. I told them I feared for my life, that I warned him, that I shot only when he kept coming. You know what they told me? "Where's the proof? That envelope with the picture? Gone. Not logged in the evidence report. The cop I gave it to? Out sick. The muddy footprints? Could have been yours? The broken latch on the back gate? Normal wear and tear." Everything I said just disappeared. They made me sit there and look at crime scene photos, like I was the monster. His body, curled on the floor, hoodie soaked red. And in every one of those photos, that twisted little smile was still stuck on his face. I didn't go to jail that night. I posted bail. But they charged me with manslaughter, pending trial. I couldn't go back home. The house was taped up, marked off as an active scene, so I stayed in a cheap motel off Route 17. You know the type. Thin walls, flickering hallway lights, a vending machine that smells like burnt plastic, and cigarettes. I didn't sleep that night either. Not because of guilt. I wasn't guilty. It was something else. Something worse. I kept waking up to this scratching sound. Not loud. Just barely enough to notice. Like nails dragging across drywall. The motel wall to my left pulsed with it. I put my ear to it, and I swear I heard breathing. Not the kind you hear through vents or pipes. This was close. Too close. Like someone was inside. I didn't even have the energy to investigate. I just turned the lights on and waited for the sun to rise. The next day, I got a call from a private lawyer. Apparently, someone had paid him to take my case. He wouldn't say who, just that he'd be defending me for free. He showed up that afternoon at the motel. Older guy, cheap suit, always smiling, like everything was a joke. But the weirdest part? He kept asking about the house. Not the shooting, not the man I killed. The house. How long had you been living there? Did you ever notice things missing? Did you ever hear noises inside the walls? That one caught me off guard. I asked him why the hell he'd ask something like that. He just said, "Some properties attract the wrong kind of attention." Then he handed me a file. Inside were photos, newspaper clippings, an old police report from 1993. Apparently, a man named Ellis Grant had lived in that same house 28 years ago. He was a loner. No family. One day, Neighbors reported a smell coming from inside. Cops broke in and found him dead in the crawl space under the floorboards. But here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. The report said he wasn't alone. There was a second man in the house, naked, covered in filth, nonverbal. He'd been living there, in the walls, surviving off scraps, rotting food, sometimes blood. They never figured out how long he'd been there. They called him mentally unstable, a danger to himself. They locked him away in some hospital out of state. No name, no records, nothing. The man I shot matched the physical description almost exactly. My lawyer closed the file and said something I still don't understand. "I don't think you killed him." I stared at him like he was insane. I shot him in the chest. I watched him drop. He just shook his head. "You killed something. But I don't think it was him." I didn't sleep that night either, because that scratching sound, it followed me. It wasn't just in the motel walls. It was in the ceiling tiles above the shower. It was under the bed. And sometimes, right at the edge of sleep, I'd hear it again. That sud's guttural breath, like someone was crouched beside me in the dark, just watching, waiting. I tried to convince myself it was trauma, a side effect of stress. The human brain is good at tricking itself when it wants to forget. But 2 nights later, I woke up with my motel door unlocked. Not just open, unlocked. And on the carpet, bare footprints, smudged in some dark, sticky liquid that wasn't there before. I checked every inch of that room, gun in hand. No one was there. Nothing was taken. But the pillow on the other side of the bed, it had an indent, like someone had been laying there, facing me, breathing next to me, watching. That was when I realized something I still can't admit out loud. Whatever I shot that night in my house, I don't think it ever left. After the motel incident, I stopped pretending I was okay. I stopped telling myself it was trauma or guilt or some weird PTSD hallucination. It wasn't. Something was wrong. I checked out of that motel before the sun came up. Didn't even take the rest of my stuff. Just left. I didn't know where to go, so I went back to the house. Yeah, I know. It sounds stupid, reckless. But when something's following you, it doesn't matter where you are. The front door still had police tape across it, but it wasn't locked. That was the first red flag. The cops don't just forget to lock down an active scene. I walked inside, and the air hit me immediately. It was thick, warm, stale, like it hadn't moved in days. And underneath that was a faint smell I still can't place. Not quite rot, not quite mold. It was organic, but wrong. I walked through the house slowly, gun drawn. Everything was exactly how I left it. Couch cushions thrown, drawers pulled out, floorboards scuffed from the struggle. But one thing was different. My bedroom door was closed. I never closed that door. I inched toward it, every step heavier than the last. My hand was shaking as I turned the knob. The door creaked open, and what I saw inside made my chest lock up. Someone had been living in there. There was food, cans, wrappers, half-eaten things that had gone fuzzy with mold. Blankets balled up in the corner, stained dark. Piles of my clothes, ripped, some wet. And on the wall, scratched into the paint with what looked like a key, or maybe a nail, was a single word repeated over and over again. Stay. Hundreds of times, in crooked, uneven lines. Big, small, slanted. Some carved so deep the drywall was bleeding powder. But what really got me? There were pictures, dozens of Polaroids pinned to the wall. All of me, some old, some I had never seen before. Me at the grocery store, me taking out the trash, me asleep on the couch, me in the shower. I couldn't breathe, and then I noticed the hole. In the corner of the room, hidden behind my old dresser, was a jagged hole cut straight into the drywall. I moved the dresser and crouched down. It was barely the size of a man's torso, but it led into darkness. I pointed my flashlight in. The beam disappeared into black. But I swear to you, something moved. Not a rat, not a draft. Something shifted. I stood up so fast, I almost dropped the gun. I backed out of the room and slammed the door. Didn't care if it was evidence. Didn't care if they tried to charge me again. I wasn't going in there. I left. Fast. Went to the only place I could think of. My brother's place, across town. He'd been out of state for work, and his apartment was empty. But he said I could crash there for a few nights. I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't have to. I think he heard it in my voice. The first night, there was quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before something awful. I kept every light on. Sat in the kitchen with the gun next to me, coffee in hand, waiting. Around 3:47 a.m., I felt it. A pressure, like gravity was pressing down on my chest. I looked down and realized I couldn't move my arms, my legs. Nothing. I was awake, but frozen. And then I saw it. In the hallway. A tall figure, naked, filthy. Hair matted with something dark. His spine twisted, like it had been broken and never healed right. He didn't walk. He twitched forward, step by step, in this jerky, unnatural way. I couldn't scream, couldn't speak. He got closer, closer. I could hear his joints cracking with every movement, like wet branches snapping. Then he leaned in. His face was inches from mine. His breath smelled like wet dirt and old meat. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were curious, like a kid dissecting a frog. Then he whispered something that made my body go cold from the inside out. "You left the door open." Just like that, he was gone. I shot up, gasping, heart slamming in my chest. Everything looked normal. No figure, no smell, just my brother's clean, silent kitchen. But my phone was gone. I tore the place apart. Nothing. Not in the cushions, not in the drawers. Then I found it. Sitting on the windowsill, recording. The video showed me, frozen in the chair, twitching slightly, and the hallway behind me, empty, until frame by frame, that thing crawled into view. That same twisted man, on all fours, moving wrong. But here's the part that makes me sick. He was smiling into the camera. He knew. He knew I'd watch it. He knew I couldn't stop him. The cops wouldn't believe me if I showed them. Hell, I barely believe me. I deleted the video and threw the phone in the trash. Then I just sat there, all night, staring at the hallway. And the worst part? Something inside me started to miss it. The attention, the fear, the obsession. Like whatever that thing was, it had left a little piece of itself in me. A voice that started whispering in my ear at night, telling me to go back to the house, back to the walls, back to where it all began. I lasted 2 days at my brother's place before the whispering got too strong. It wasn't like hearing a voice in the room. It was more like a thought that wasn't mine, slipping into my head when I was tired, telling me things I didn't want to think, telling me the house wasn't done with me, telling me I needed to finish what I started. I tried to ignore it. I blasted music. I left the TV on. I even slept with a towel over my ears, like a child trying to block out monsters. But the whisper always got through. And by the third night, it wasn't whispering anymore. It was pacing inside the walls. My brother lives in a modern complex. Solid drywall, clean paint, no crawl spaces or vents big enough for anything larger than dust. But at around 2 a.m., I heard slow, steady steps slide behind the wall by the couch. Heavy, almost dragging. Then the wall made a sound I'd never heard drywall make in my life. A long, low groan, like someone pushing their shoulder into it hard, testing its strength. That was when I realized something terrifying. It wasn't the house that mattered. It was me. Whatever I shot, whatever crawled on the motel floor, whatever crouched in the hallway, watching me freeze. It had attached itself, like a leech under the skin. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't risk dragging whatever this thing was into my brother's life. So I grabbed my keys, walked out without even locking the door, and drove back to the one place I swore I'd never return to. My house. The police tape was gone. No lock on the door. No sign of officers inside. It was like they'd abandoned the place completely. Even the dried marker outlines on the floor where the body had been or wiped clean. No one had cleaned the rest of the mess, so every step I took sent dust swirling into the air. The house felt used, like someone had been walking around while I was gone, breathing in the corners, touching things. I went straight to the bedroom. The scratched writing, "Stay," repeated over and over, was still there, but something new had been added beneath it. Bigger letters, deeper scratches. "Come back." I didn't want to go near the hole again, but my body leaned toward it on its own, like gravity pulling me. I crouched down slowly, flashlight shaking in my hand. And the first thing I noticed, the hole was bigger, way bigger. Someone had torn chunks of drywall out, widening it into a pitch-black opening large enough for a grown man to slide through. The edges were smeared with something dark, not blood, something thicker, almost like mud mixed with oil. My stomach turned. I stuck my hand toward the hole, not inside it, just close enough to feel the temperature, and the air that drifted out was warm, like the inside of a body. Then something brushed my knuckles. Not a hand, not an animal. Something softer, damp, like cold skin. I jerked back so fast I hit my head against the dresser. The flashlight rolled across the floor and stopped with its beam pointing into the hole. And that's when I saw it. An eye, just one, pressed against the dirt and insulation, wide open, unblinking, watching me. I froze. My throat locked up. For a full 10 seconds, neither of us moved. Then the eye blinked. Slow, deliberate, and a voice, low and hoarse, almost childlike, came whispering out of the hole. "You left me inside." I fell backward, trying to get away. My hands scraped against broken pieces of drywall, but I didn't feel any pain. I grabbed my gun and pointed it at the hole, but nothing came out. Instead, something slid back inside. I heard it moving, slow, sticky, dragging sounds, like someone pulling themselves deeper into a tight space. I should have run. I should have left the house and never come back. I should have called anyone, even if they'd think I was losing it. But the whisper returned in my head, soft and calm. "Follow." And my legs obeyed. I don't know what came over me. Maybe exhaustion, maybe fear, maybe something worse. But I found myself crawling into the hole. My flashlight beam jittered across the wooden beams, the pipes, the shredded insulation. The air smelled sweet and rotten at the same time, like someone had stored fruit down here and forgotten it for months. As I moved deeper, the space opened up into a crawl space I didn't know existed. There was enough room to kneel, but barely. My knees sank into soft dirt. And then I saw it. An area cleared out like a nest. Blankets, clothes, objects from my house I didn't even know were missing. My missing socks, my old phone case, even a spoon I thought I'd misplaced. And in the middle of it, a journal. My journal. One I hadn't seen since I was a kid. I picked it up slowly, feeling the dirt slide off the cover. I flipped it open, and my breath caught in my chest. It wasn't my handwriting inside anymore. Page after page was filled with shaky letters, uneven lines, like someone who never learned how to write, trying to force the words into place. Over and over, it said, "I listen when you sleep. I crawl where you can't. I kept you safe. Don't leave me again." Then the last page, fresh ink, still wet. "I want to come out now." The dirt behind me shifted. A breath against the back of my neck. Hot, wet, slow. Then a hand, cold and trembling, wrapped around my ankle. I didn't look. I didn't scream. I just crawled out as fast as I could, ripping my clothes on the jagged opening. I ran to my car and didn't stop driving until I reached the outskirts of the city. I'm writing this from a public park Wi-Fi connection. I don't know where to go next, but I do know one thing. Whatever I shot that night wasn't just living in my house. It was living under it, inside it. And now it's looking for a way into me. I didn't sleep for 3 days after I crawled out of that hole. Not even a blink. I stayed awake with a gun in my lap and both eyes on every shadow. Gas stations, empty parking lots, library corners with outlets and cameras. I rotated between them, never staying in one spot more than a few hours. I figured if I kept moving, whatever it was couldn't follow me. But I was wrong. It didn't need to follow, because it was already inside. Not in a possessed kind of way, not some movie demon. This was real, messy, human, ugly. It started small. The second night, I caught myself talking in my sleep. I was still awake, watching the sunrise from the corner of a train station, but I heard my own voice behind my teeth, whispering things I didn't understand. My tongue was moving without me realizing it. My throat was dry, but pushing out words in a slow, rhythmic tone. I caught just one sentence. "I like how you feel from the inside." After that, it all went downhill. My reflection changed. Not at once. Not in some dramatic horror movie jump scare. It was slower, sneaky, little things. My smile didn't look right. I didn't remember putting my eyebrows like that. My posture, straighter than it ever was. Hands smoother. Too smooth. The lines on my palms, gone. Then I noticed my fingernails had grown back overnight. Perfectly clean. Even. White. Except I bit my nails. Always had. My whole life. And when I yanked one off in a gas station bathroom just to prove I wasn't crazy, it didn't bleed. No pain. No blood. Just this pale, soft tissue underneath. Almost waxy. Like I'd been molded. Like something had been building me again. That night, I finally broke down and tried to call my brother. I hadn't spoken to him since I left. Didn't even say goodbye. But when I dialed, it rang only once before someone answered. But it wasn't him. It was me. My voice. Calm. Cheerful. Confident. "Hey, bro," it said. "Just got back. Everything's good. House is clean. You don't have to worry about me anymore." I couldn't even speak. I just stood there, listening to myself talk. "Actually," it said, chuckling, "I've been sleeping better than ever. You should come visit." Click. I threw the phone against the wall and sat there, shaking so bad I couldn't move. I felt like I had just watched my own funeral, and the thing giving the eulogy was still wearing my face. That's when it really hit me. Whatever was in the walls, whatever I let crawl back into the world, it didn't want to haunt me. It wanted to replace me. And now it was out there, pretending to be me, calling my family, going back to my job, sleeping in my bed, living my life. And no one could tell the difference, because I'm gone. Or maybe I never really came out of that crawl space. Maybe I died that night, and something else crawled out using my name. But the body still remembers. I can feel it, scratching from the inside, like a prisoner in my own skin. My joints ache in ways they shouldn't. My stomach growls, but food doesn't help. I've eaten raw meat, spoiled fruit, moldy bread. Nothing fills it. It wants other things, warm things, living things. Last night, I woke up under an overpass, dirt packed into my mouth, eyes caked shut. My fingers were bleeding. My pants were soaked with something I couldn't identify. I found scratches on my arms that spelled something faint, but legible. Let me finish. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. I feel it pushing harder now, slipping into my voice when I talk to people, smiling when I'm supposed to be scared, laughing when I'm alone. One side of my face doesn't respond like it used to. It twitches when I think about going home, like it's excited, like he's excited. And here's the worst part, the one that makes me want to vomit every time I remember. I miss the feeling of him watching me. I miss the breathing in the walls. I miss knowing something needed me so badly it would live in my filth, hide in my vents, sneak into my bed, and never ask for anything except to be near me. Because everything else in my life left. Everyone else walked away. But he stayed. He watched. He listened. And now, he's here. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel him pressing up against the back of my skin, like a wet, warm body sliding into a suit that was never meant to come off. I don't know what's going to happen after I hit Maybe this is the last thing I'll ever write as myself. Maybe the next time you hear from me, it won't be me talking anymore. But if you see me on the street, if I smile at you too wide, if my eyes stay open too long when I blink, if I say your name before you tell it to me, run. Because I'm not me anymore. And he wants you now.